Hi, I'm Teacher Joko. Today we're going to be looking at writing task 2. Question that's been answered by a candidate and put on the IELTS tips and tricks group where I've been active for a few years. And now we have the second edition, the second coming of the IELTS Temple. The website and blog is back. I've got the ability now to actually take students. So if you would like to be mentored by me, inquire at the IELTS Temple blogspot.ieltstemple.com. You see right here. My little banner here. So let's get on with it. Today I want to talk about task 2, and let's first compare it to task 1, where I have discussed in the past how task 1 is similar to a salad. It's all about the right ingredients and mixing them in the correct proportions to create a whole that is well structured and tasty. Task 2 is more like not a salad so much as a curry. You still need the best ingredients, but you have to blend them together and hold them together using things like cohesive devices, and you present a point, an opinion, several, and develop them through examples and explanations. It's more complicated, it's worth more, but it still relies on basic ingredients like good vocabulary. Alright, so here was the question that was presented in the group. It was answered. It's been around some time. You can see it here above me that some people think the university should provide graduates with the knowledge and skills in the workplace. Others think that the true function of university should be to give access to knowledge for its own sake, knowledge's own sake, regardless of whether the course is useful to an employer. What, in your opinion, should be the main function of a university? This barcode here, the QR, is a link to the largest group in Facebook for people seeking help with their IELTS. The title of the lesson today is Repetition, Repetition, and Repetition. You'll see what I'm talking about when we look at the sample essay, which is quite typical of a band 5.5, I'd say, is what we're looking at. Okay, so what kind of question is this? Well, is it a discursive? Are you supposed to discuss both views? It doesn't say that. Are you supposed to give your own opinion? Yes, it does say, what is your opinion? However, the way it's structured is not typical because this is a general training question. Do I have to discuss both views? Well, they wouldn't spend all that time putting those down there if they didn't want you to discuss them. So it's discursive and it's opinion. It's definitely general training. The academic version of this would be a discuss both views and give your own opinion question. Now, at the end of the question, on every task 2, it says, give reasons for your answers and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. This is part of every task 2. They put the instructions in there for a reason, and you need to do these things. And this is what the student wrote. Now, first thing I do when I get an essay is put it into wordcounter.net. And then it shows me some statistics like longest sentence, 49 words, average sentence in words. If you're doing a bunch of writing, check what your average is. Is there an ideal number? Somewhere in the low 20s, I think, is good for maintaining good flow. You know, you want the sentences to be readable, but complex. And then here, in this writing piece, you'll see that the word universities has been used 8 times. Should students knowledge, but be cautious about using the same vocabulary in the same paragraph and certainly not in the same sentence. This is often, I think, overstated, the importance of unique vocabulary, but that's coming from a position where it is important not to repeat yourself. This is what our candidate wrote. Now, in your introduction, you want to rephrase the question, paraphrase it, and discuss what your answer is in short, and what your opinion is here. first of all, it's one long sentence, so it's rather hard to read. And grammar-wise, a relative clause is a group of words that relate to a noun. Okay? And their relative clauses begin with things like which, where, when. Now, you separate that from, in this case, the noun that it's relating to, skills. We separate that from the rest of the sentence if it's non-defining, meaning it's extra information. You can look this up in a good grammar book. Defining versus non-defining relative clauses. And this is definitely a defining relative clause. It defines what the skills are, and so it is not separated by a comma. Okay, applicable to their work life. Now, vocabulary. Be careful when you have two nouns next to one another. Nouns are like siblings, brothers and sisters. They don't like to sit next to each other. They don't sit well unless they collocate. And work life does collocate, but we're talking about things like work-life balance. Okay, applicable to their work life. In that case, work life, as it's commonly used, does not fit that sentence. To their career. Should have wrote. Okay. And here we see our first examples of repetition. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Look here where it says universities should teach their students, or if they should teach their students, that repetition of should teach their students is not needed, and it slows the reader down who's reading unnecessary words, and you're annoying them, which are not beneficial for their professional lives at all. Really? That's not what the question said. It doesn't say, okay, who are they in there? It's just, you're only the specific subjects. Specific is actually the opposite of what you want here. The general subjects, not specifically to a career, but general, like philosophy and stuff. I don't know why you use specifics there. Perhaps because it is alliteration. Specific subjects, a couple of S's. You don't get any points for that in IELTS. In your choice of tense in task 2, you often have the opportunity to show that you know how to use future forms, past, there's 10 or so different tenses that you should master. And here, everything is in the present tense. You have, because we're talking about the future, we have the ability to use will, won't be, aren't going to be, might not be, including future forms that use modal verbs. Is a missed opportunity. Is it going to bring the score down? No, but it won't allow it to rise up. And here we are into body paragraph 1. On the one hand, now look at this first sentence. On the one hand, proponents who believe that the primary aim of the university should be the provision of knowledge to maintain its academic reputation across the country. Period. It's not a complete sentence. Topic sentences are very important. Your first sentence of the paragraph, you need to nail that. And this is not a topic sentence. Nowadays, many tertiary institutes tend to engage in competition. Engage. How so? What do you mean? Engage in competition. What happens? What are you talking about? I don't think that's what happens. I think that most universities approach their academic standing and their position on a list is not as a competition against another. Well, it is a competition in some ways, but it's not a direct competition. They're doing the best that they can and making themselves the best they can be, and then wherever they stand and wherever they land in the standings, that's what it is. Okay, so how do they do this? Well, therefore, in order to win this competition, it's not a competition, and I don't know what you mean by win. What is win? Many tertiary institutes, there's that same repetition of tertiary institute that we saw earlier. It's a good piece of vocabulary, but you don't get any extra points for using it twice. schedule their right. To win this competition, many tertiary institutes schedule their academic curriculum for their own benefits rather than for their students. That needs to be explained. Well, what you mean? Oh, well, you don't explain it. You go to an example, or this person does. And that's jumping to the example too quickly. What do you mean? Here, well, let's see this is in Pakistan. A number of universities set their subjects curriculum, in odd collocation there, according to the requirements of the professional exams. Well, I would hope so. That's what they do. This enables the students to pass the exams. Yeah. And to maintain one of the top positions across the country. Oh, they're doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for the students. That's kind of the opposite of what one of the views is. Here you're referring to the point of view from the introduction that knowledge should be taught for its own sake, not in regards to how it relates to a professional exam. For its own sake, for knowledge's own sake. That's not the position that you have presented in this paragraph, so it does not address the task. Moving on, body paragraph 2. On the other hand, saw that one coming. One hand, other hand. I support the viewpoint that providing students with the knowledge and skills which are beneficial for them in their professional lives. Once again, we have the relative clause separated by commas, saying it's non-defining when it is a defining relative clause and it does not use commas. That should be the fundamental aim of universities. Okay, great. This allows students to enhance their professional development later in lives. Academic development is what goes on in universities. That's not professional development. So we got it's a good bit of vocabulary, but just because it's a good bit of vocabulary doesn't mean we should use it. Okay. Later in lives. Now we go once again, you've gone straight to the example. Take the example of the UK, where a large number of universities offer different researches. That's not a word, researches. Which can be practically applicable in one's professional life. Once again, no comma there before the which, you're overusing which anyway. So this is about what happens at university. Okay, not what happens in one's professional life. This approach, what approach? Also assist individuals in the workplace implementation of that practical knowledge. Again, not addressing the topic. This is about what should be the function of a university. Not what does it do for you afterward. Oh, what did I do? Oh, here we go. Yeah, and here's the points that I just made. There's enhance again. Ow! You know, I'm doing something over here. All right. Conclusion. Note, the conclusion is one long sentence. That might be the 49-word sentence. Of course, the introduction was all one long sentence, too. Tertiary institutes speak for the provision of knowledge for their personal benefits. For knowledge's own sake is what it's for. That was the one point. To their graduates, career-oriented knowledge, whatever that is. What is career-oriented knowledge? And we've got a lot of the same words being repeated again and again. Don't do that. I think that's it. Is that the end? Okay. So for task response, that's the point as I've made. You're not addressing the task. Really understand and break down what the question is asking you to talk about. C&C, coherence and cohesion. Your cohesive devices on the one hand, on the other hand. I would not recommend anybody use that in a formal setting like an IELTS because it's too predictable. Poor referencing. The they and the pronouns that you used were often unclear, and then in many times you repeated words where a reference would have sufficed. Lexical resources. Reaching. Trying to use words that are high-level vocabulary but don't fit in the context of this discussion. And then the grammatical, the repeated errors with the relative clauses. Now that's a a high-level problem to have, but it is those errors repeated like that. So find out where your grammar weaknesses are. Otherwise, the grammar was pretty good. Okay, so that's it, folks. That is an example of what I do when I break down an essay. If you got something from this, please like and subscribe. You know, in something like 300 videos so I've done so far for IELTS, I've never ever said, please like and subscribe. So like and subscribe. And if you want to get serious and you need a top-notch professional coach to ensure that you get the score you need and you're not repeating the test again and again, send me a message and we can talk. Thanks for watching. And this is Badger. Oh, I got you. Meow.